A few years back, I saw this dress and I fell in love with it. Fast forward to today, I tried ordering this dress and the website is kind of closed and it was kind of expensive and blah blah. So I thought, why not do it myself? So if you want to learn how to do a dress as a beginner who has never done anything like that without having a sewing machine, you have come to the right video. Before starting this video, I just want to say I only paid $19 considering you already have needles, threads, and hands. Also, it took me 4 days to finish this dress. Of course, I wasn't working day and night, so it's honestly not that bad. And if you have a sewing machine, it's not gonna take you 4 days. Okay, enough talking, let's go. So step number 1 is pretty self-explanatory. You're going to want to measure and write down every inch of your body. Don't forget the waist and the length of the skirt. So for now, we're going to separate the dress into 3 pieces. We have the bra cups, and then we have the waist belt thing, and we have the skirt. I'm starting with the waist belt, and after looking at the picture, I noticed that the waist belt is not like a straight line. It kind of goes down. I'll insert a picture and kind of show you. So this is what I try to recreate.
Always cut a few centimeters extra on every side.
So as I said, always cut extra fabric because you never know. It's better to have more than less. And so this is the waist belt, and now I'm gonna cut the bra cups. I kind of also tried to draw the same shape. I also used this method where I put the paper on myself, and believe it or not, it kind of helps me visualize like what the shape is gonna look like. And this is it. So next I'm drawing the line where I'm going to kind of pinch the fabric in order to create like a cup for the chest to sit in. You're gonna see more details later. Okay guys, we are ready to go buy the fabric. So for this step, you're gonna want to go on Google Maps and write down fabric store next to me. And I found Taliban store in Qatar next to my house, and fortunately it had everything I needed. It's very important that you take with you the measurements that you need and a picture of the dress you're recreating. This way you can get the closest looking fabric. And don't hesitate to take a few extra inches in case you do any mistakes. After getting the fabric, I went ahead and bought a few accessories that I needed, such as the zipper, the strap. So you want to make a list before going to the store, so this way you won't forget. Overall, it was a great success. I got everything and I can't wait to show you in this haul.
Okay, so first of all, I got this. It's very thick. This is going to be for the doubling and tripling, just for the cups and for the waistband. The main material I'm using for the dress, silk, but I'm going to use the other side of the silk because the dress is not silk, as you can see from the picture.
Finally, this is going to go under the skirt.
I got one zipper, it's 20 centimeters. Two bra cup, the lace. Obviously, if you're customizing a dress for yourself, you're gonna need to measure everything.
So it was already the evening of day 1. I was kind of tired, but still I went ahead and cut a few pieces of not the main fabric, the fabric that's going behind the main one, and then I went to sleep. I'm not being so loud because they're still sleeping.
Today I'm gonna start by cutting the top half using the main fabric. This time it's gonna be more precise, a bit more careful. Basically we're gonna be working with the satin that I got, or silk, I don't know the difference.
So yeah.
So I cut 4 of these because I'm gonna have 2 on each side. So this is going to be the boob area. I cut 2 pieces because we are gonna do 3 layers of everything. So now what I'm doing is cutting the official layer that's gonna show.
So when cutting the chest, if you picked a fabric like me, which is not the same on both sides, you're gonna have to make sure to flip the pattern around before cutting the other side. If you want to make it easier on yourself and not flip around the patterns, just buy fabric which is the same on both sides. Now I just cut the waist belt, and don't forget to cut it bigger than your actual size, guys, because you're gonna need a lot of fabric when stitching, and this is what I end up with. So remember the line that I drew on the chest pattern, this is where we're gonna use it. Turn your fabric to this side that you're not gonna see and pinch it and go ahead and stitch it. You can do some trial stitches before doing the final stitch, which is what I did. So the bigger the triangle, the bigger the cup is going to be. So if you have bigger chests, you need a bigger triangle. But keep in mind that the bigger the triangle, the smaller the fabric is going to be after you stitch it. So make sure the pattern that you cut before is big enough. Now that we have the two main fabrics stitched, we need to figure out what to do with the two under layers. So what I did is just cut a line where I stitched basically, and I put them on top of each other to also create like a bump. Once again, the more you put them on top of each other, the bigger the cup is going to be. And then I'm just stitching very simple stitches on top of this because this layer is not gonna show. So see what I mean by the bump? Now for the waist belt, I'm just drawing slightly with a pen where I need the stitches to be. Very, very important that you do not stitch on top of where the bra cups are going to be placed and where the skirt is going to be placed. So you're basically just stitching the sides of the waist belt, and once you flip it around, it should look like a waist belt. However, it is not closed yet. And same thing for the bra cups. Focus with me again. I draw where I need to stitch, but I do not stitch the side which is going to be attached to the waist belt. So this is very important because you need to flip everything around and then place them together to stitch them, which you're gonna see later on. After stitching and flipping around the bra cups and the waist belt, I ironed them to keep them in place, and this is what they should look like. But as I said, it's still open. We still did not stitch them together. This leads me to this next step, which is very hard to explain. Basically, we're placing the chest pieces facing down inside the waist belt, and the main fabric of the chest pieces should be facing the main fabric of the waist belt, or else it's gonna end up in a disaster. So really take your time for this step and you're gonna end up with the whole top. Day 3, I'm going to be working on the skirt. Hey guys, I'm just gonna take a second and explain how I did the skirt. So since we're going for like a gown type of skirt, I have to start with a square to begin with and then cut a circle and a small circle for the waist in the middle. However, if you look at her skirt, you will notice that the skirt is just not dripping down flatly. It has some pretty big folds all around. In order to do that, I had to start with a very large waist so that when I folded all the folds, the size became the size of my waist basically. So you're going to see it more in detail and I hope you're going to understand it, but I highly recommend trying it on a paper before. This way you can really visualize and know what you're doing before starting to cut. So for me, I started to cut a 1.5 meter by 1.5 meter square. So to do that, just use a table or just put your fabric on the ground. You're going to need it on a flat surface and try to cut as straight as possible. After that, I folded the square into 4 and then I folded diagonally to get like a triangle. And basically the top of this triangle, like the middle of the square, is going to be where the waist is. Next, I'm just placing exactly where I'm going to cut the circle for my waist. I pin it down this way it doesn't move when I cut it. And now I'm doing the same thing for the length of the skirt. So knowing the length that I want and trying to use as much fabric as possible, I go all around and create a line. So now I have the line for the waist where I'm gonna cut, and I have the line for the end of the skirt. That's the maximum I could get. So remember that if you start with a bigger square, you can get a longer skirt and a bigger waist, so you can do some bigger folds. After cutting along the lines, I am now measuring the waist that I have because obviously I'm gonna need to know how much I can remove from this waist and do it into a fold, if that makes sense, until it gets to the size of my actual waist. So you don't want to make it too small or too big. You want it perfectly, so don't forget to measure your waist. After doing that, I am placing exactly where I want the folds. So for me, I was able to do 4 folds. So 2 folds in the front, 2 folds in the back. And I obviously did some measurements so that they would be centered in a way. After doing that, you can kind of fold them and pin them down to see what you end up with. And by the way, guys, if you noticed, I am not working on the actual skirt. I'm working on the under layer here, but it's basically the same thing that I did on my skirt with just some differences in the folds. I'll show you later what I did for the main one. After you've pinned them down, this is how the skirt should look, and now it's my actual waist size. Now you can go ahead and stitch on top of the folds. Another tip, try to stitch as close to the edge as possible, because the more you go down, the more you're taking from the length of a skirt and just ruining all your measurements. After that, I started working on the main fabric of the skirt, so the outside layer basically. As you can see, I use a pencil to put down like some dots and lines where I'm going to need to fold. However, for this outside layer, I ended up doing 6 folds instead of 4. And you guessed it, if I do 6, I need to do smaller folds because I had the same size skirt outside and inside. So why did I do 6? Because I noticed on the picture that she has 2 folds like right in the center of her. So that's why I did 2 opposite ones like facing each other, and then 2 on their sides and 2 in the back. So I stitched the folds of the main skirt, and then I placed the underlayer skirt under it, and I stitched them together. So now I have the full skirt, and now we're ready to attach these two together. So in order to do that, again, you have to put them face to face. So the cups are facing the front side of the skirt, if that makes sense, from under the skirt. I really recommend you pin them down together and hold your dress up straight so that you make sure you're stitching the right places. After stitching, this is what I end up with. And one very important thing is we're still going to insert the zipper here. That's why you do not close the dress completely. And even when stitching the skirts, you should avoid going on top of where the zipper is going to be. This way you can easily cut into it and then stitch everything back together. So now I'm gonna cut a straight line. As you can see, I drew it on the skirt, and this is where the zipper is going to be. I flip my dress right side up and I place the zipper where it has to be, and I pin it down basically the closest possible to the zipper. This way it doesn't really show on the back. And now you are ready to stitch, so you don't have to flip the dress around to do this step. You can just stitch on the right side up and do some really like straight stitches and small ones. So this is what I end up with, and now I can go ahead and stitch the top ones facing the inside. I'm gonna do a video. My boyfriend is coming over and he's going to react to my Valentine's outfits, and he has no idea, but this dress is gonna be one of them, and I'm gonna surprise him by telling him that I'm the one who created this dress. So you should really subscribe if you want to watch this video. Okay, bye. Only a few steps left until the dress is completely done. For the straps, we just look at the picture and do the same thing. So we have 2 straps on each side. However, you're gonna need to wear the dress and measure it on your body before pinning down where you're going to stitch. And here it is. And finally, the last step for me is to hem the bottom of the dress. And if your under layer is kind of longer, then you're gonna need to cut it all around. But I don't feel like it's necessary to hem the underlayer fabric as well. So you just fold the bottom about 1 centimeter inside and pin it down and start stitching all around. Day 4. I'm still working on the bottom.
3 hours later, I still have all of this.
Nearly there.